A jury found millionaire Robert Durst not guilty in the murder of his 71-year-old neighbor, Morris Black. Were you surprised at the jury's verdict?
If you would have asked me before the trial, I would have been, but about during jury selection, I started seeing this as a possibility.
What do you say to the people who are waking up this morning saying the bizarre circumstances? This is a guy who admits to cutting up the body, putting the parts in bags, dumping him into Galveston Bay. He was on the run from police. He dressed as a mute woman to disguise himself. Is this the same Robert Durst who was just acquitted? What do you say to those people?
He wasn't charged with all that. And I would like to clarify one thing here. In 3 days that Robert Durst was on the stand, he never said that he killed Morris Black. He said he struggled with Morris Black and the gun accidentally went off in self-defense.
It was purely an accident according to Robert Durst.
Yes, it did.
What did you think of the defense's strategy? Obviously, it was a risky one, sort of the all or nothing, and they had the ability to really make the jurors narrowly focus on the crime itself and pretty much ignore the events that followed the crime.
Well, these are some of the best attorneys that we have in Texas, and you know, you could take any case and two lawyers will try it differently, and that's why some strategies are risky and some lawyers are willing to take more risk than others. You never know when it's going to pay off. A lot of lawyers in the state would have tried the case differently. These guys are called a dream team for a reason.
What do you think was your most compelling argument during the course of this trial that swayed the jury the most?
Our best shot at it was that the jury had to separate what happened after Morris Black was dead from the way that he died. And the jury was intellectually capable of doing that. There was no proof from the prosecution about how Morris Black died. We had a tremendous advantage over the prosecution because we had Bob Durst, who was there and knew what happened.
And what about the prosecution? Did you feel as if they should have gone for a lesser charge, that by going for first-degree murder that they sort of boxed themselves in?
That's a risk too, you know. It's easy to second guess them, especially after the trial, but every lawyer who makes that decision takes a risk, and that risk can go either way depending on what the jury thinks.
We can't retry the case here this morning, but all the evidence we had clearly pointed to what we felt was murder. Abuse of a corpse is a Class A misdemeanor punishable by a year in the county jail. That's nothing that we're going to take this man to trial on. Not with the evidence that we had that he had cleaned up those apartments, that he had fled, and he dismembered Morris. We did the right thing. We'd do it the same way if we had this evidence again.
Where did you go wrong, you think, when it came to prosecuting this case?
I'm not going to say that we went wrong anywhere. When we go into a crime scene that's been cleaned, as Mr. Durst left it, and we have the murder weapon disposed of, trashed, we have the body disposed of and cut up and trashed, and we have a defendant on the run. In our minds, at least, we had a defendant who had committed something other than an act of self-defense or an accidental act. Unfortunately for this jury, it wasn't enough. We respect that decision, but we were left with basically, what can we do with Mr. Durst when he hits the stand? We tried our best to put holes and shake his credibility. I think we accomplished that.
We didn't believe a lot of what he said.
So in other words, Robert Durst takes the stand, he tells a story, you didn't buy the whole story.
We did not buy the whole story.
We threw his story out. Some of us didn't even listen to any of it. We threw it out and looked solely at the evidence that was presented.
But so how do you look at the testimony of a guy who you say has lied to you in some areas, and then believe him in other areas?
It's not in the belief of, to believe him, but the actual self-defense is who had their hand on the gun.
The prosecution, we realized that the prosecution did not have a lot of stuff to go on. But their job was to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he was guilty.
If you're going and you're boiling this down to what happened when that gun was present in the room with the two guys, why does a guy who kills someone in an accident then panic and cut up a body and dispose of the parts? How did you deal with that question?
But we still don't know. There's still that reasonable doubt that he killed him.
But I'm saying, if it was an accident, why cut up the body and dispose of it? Why not call the police and say, a terrible accident just occurred?
The only explanation for me would be panic. They told us that he had Asperger's syndrome. They never put any doctors up there to prove that, but for me, it was panic. I don't know what I would do if something like that had happened to me. You can't answer that question.
Had the head been found and there was a bullet hole to the back of the head, I think definitely conclusions would have been different.
This
I can
jury.
understand why
Please
people were
don't.
shocked, but they did not see and hear what we saw and heard.